All right. Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Presence podcast. I am so excited today. I have a very special guest, Miss Brigitte Brown Jackson. She is the dynamic founder of Exponential EduVentures with 30 years of training experience, 17 years of leadership at the helm of multi-million dollar organizations. So she has proven herself a powerhouse in her field. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to dive into this. As a speaker, an author, a consultant, an extreme execution coach trained by Dr. Eric Thomas, Bridget's leadership style is a unique blend of assertiveness, enthusiasm, patience, and precision. Fueled by purpose, faith, and wisdom, she captivates audiences nationwide, leaving a lasting impact on all she encounters. Whether you seek bold direction, infectious energy, steadfast support, or meticulous planning, Bridget is the guiding light on your journey to success. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Melanie.
Absolutely. I am so excited. I know when we first had a conversation, we were both just excited, and we could have had that conversation as the podcast episode,
Absolutely. Look, we went in.
right? So today we're going to be talking a lot about communication, right? So I know as we tend to build our personal brands, a big part of that is our communication, how we speak, how we show up, our unspoken communication, and how that really lands on the people that we're speaking to or trying to communicate to. And so the big thing with that is the intersection between kind of being able to reach your audience and adapt to their communication style, but at the same time, we don't want to sacrifice our authenticity in how we communicate. So it's going to be a good conversation today. I'm excited to dive
Absolutely.
in. So tell us a little bit, Bridget, about your work as it relates to like this whole concept of communicating.
Thank you, Melanie. I love it. Thank you, first of all, for having me. Every time I get an opportunity to speak, I always want to, honor that person that gave me that opportunity and then honor, my God that gave me that opportunity because I was born to be able to do this. I tell people all the time. I think I was born with a speaker in my mouth. But what I do now, I'm a coach and a consultant. So Exponential EduVentures is a consultant firm where we help leaders develop their leadership as well as their teams and their team's leadership. Because even if you have a leadership role, if you have a ... behind your name or whatever it is, everybody has the ability to be able to self-lead, and everybody must then have the ability to be able to communicate. And it even goes deeper because I teach people it's just not about communication, it's about comprehension. I love Stephen Covey. He was probably the first guru that I studied when I was a teacher. So I started off in the world of education. I was a teacher, then a principal, and now I'm a full-time entrepreneur, again, with my own firm. And one of the things that struck me, that grabbed me early on in my career was, again, Stephen Covey and his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the things that we have to understand is we need to seek to understand before we are understood. But you can only do that if you know how to communicate with other people and you understand that common language that we have. And so one of the things that I do right now is I'm a certified, what I call a DISC instructor, but of course I call the one that I deliver and do the flight assessment. So we're going to get into that and talk about that a little bit later because everybody can relate to the flight experience. Well, almost everybody. I've only met a handful of people that said they've never flown a plane, not flown a plane, but been on a plane. So very, very important with that.
Awesome. Love that. I find it interesting you just said you were a teacher. My past 2 guests were also past teachers, and they all had similar stories about needing to get out of the classroom. I think that's a different topic for another day, but I just wanted to highlight that because I find it interesting that I'm running into a lot of past teachers
Yeah.
and educators. All right.
It's
So
Teacher Appreciation Week. So
it is. Yeah, I gotta get
right.
some stuff together for my kids to take. They've been bugging me all weekend. I'm like, I'll get to it. But anyway, all right. So I want to know from you, what is it that you feel is one of the most important ways to understand who you're talking to so that you make sure your message is conveyed and understood by them?
Well, I've always loved psychometrics. And so for people to understand what that means, psychology, understanding the psychology of other people. And there's tools out there to help you understand the psychology of other people. Many people call them personality profiles or personality assessments. I've always did it. Every school I was in, we did some type. And so I've done the DISC, we've done Myers-Briggs, we've done True Colors, we've done different things. And so when I started my business, I automatically gravitated back to this because I'm like, listen, if I'm going to do business with other people, I have to understand other people. If I'm going to do business with people, I have to be a good communicator. If I'm going to be in a relationship with my magnificent, wonderful husband, I got to understand how to communicate with him. And the same thing, he has to know how to communicate with me. One of the things I was thinking about this morning, Melanie, with this month being, the Mother's Day month, right? I was like, you know what? I love all the accolades that you said. You read my bio, and I've had an amazing career. I was sitting down thinking about it this morning, able to make, 7 figures plus in my career. I have 3 degrees. I've been around the country, spoken, and I have all these different things that I've been able to do. But I say my number one best thing that I've been able to do is be a mother. And so even in being that mother, being able to communicate. Now, my children are grown. So I really have to communicate with them more than anything now, because it's no, go to your room. Like, we can have a breakdown in communication. I mean, think about it. You probably know people that they don't speak to family members for years on end, decades. And, but if people understood other people and knew how to communicate, they wouldn't do that. And so if you're doing that in your personal life, you're going to carry that over into your business world. And so it's very important for people to understand, who are you at a microscopic level? And so that's what I do for people. And I help people understand that. And so with the flight assessment, I talk about the 4 different personality styles, and I'll break them down as we go through this conversation. But first, it always starts off with you understanding yourself. And so I did it to understand myself. And so I tell people all the time, I coach, but my number one client is Brigitte.
I love that. And I was gonna ask you about that self-awareness part, right? Because I find that, some people tend to code switch a lot, and they'll talk totally different depending on who they're talking to or who they're with. And it's kind of frowned upon because we feel like, who are you in real life? Right? So how do you strike that balance between still being who you are and speaking how you speak, but still being able to kind of tweak it a little bit depending on your audience?
I love it. I love this question. I love this question because I just had a prospect. She didn't become my client, but I was able to really open up her eyes. So I'm waiting. She's coming soon. But I was really able to give her some awareness. And so let me break down first. I'm going to come back to your question, because I call it, you got to be authentic. So right. 2 of the things that I show people what to do is, 1, be very self-aware. And when you're self-aware, then you can be truly authentic to who you are. And in that authenticity, again, you got to kind of know, who are you? You've probably been, some people have been with themselves for years, like I had been, but I understand myself at such a deep level now, Melanie. I can understand the things that try to trigger me, because I understand what my strengths are. I understand what my limitations are and how they're infused in there. So the 4 different personality styles, and I'm going to do the DISC because most people know the DISC. So they know the D, the I, the S, and the C. But again, I call our assessment that we do, we call it the flight assessment. And I say our, it's not mine. It belongs to Dr. Eric Thomas, but I'm one of the coaches in the community. So it's mine too. I don't believe in being in anything that you don't feel like you're a part of it. And so he came up with an assessment that talks about 4 different, basically, characters: the flight attendant, the grounds crew, the air traffic control, and the pilot. If you think about that, all 4 when you go into an airport. You know what the role of the flight attendant is. You know what they're going to do. You know what the role of the grounds crew is. You know what the role of the air traffic controller is. You know what the role of the pilot is. They all have specific roles and they have to be authentic them. The air traffic controller is definitely not trying to jump in that cockpit and drive that plane. The air traffic control's job is to look at big picture, everything, and then go down to the minute, get into the grass, the blades of grass about things. Because again, we don't want any air traffic accidents, right? And so they have to do that. And so the flight attendant, if you notice, when you get on that plane, that flight attendant is all about serving people. And they want to make sure that people have a great experience. And so that's what flight attendants do. And so I'm a flight attendant. Okay. And so to help people understand it, to connect it, so people might have taken the DISC assessment, that's the I, right? So very, very interactive, inspiring, engaging, very much visionary. Those type of people are so out there, and, don't ever meet a stranger. I'm going to talk to everybody. If you get in the elevator with me before we get to the second floor, you're going to know something about me, or I'm going to know something about you. I'm just outgoing, right? Very gregarious, very charismatic. And so that's the flight attendant. That grounds crew type person is going to be people oriented too. But if you think about where you see the grounds crew, you see them outside of the plane. Or you see them helping people board and get onto the plane. They're more servers, they're helpers, they're supporters. I call them the Martin Luther Kings of the world. Martin Luther King, we think that some people probably would think that he was more flight attendant type style, but he wasn't. If you looked at him, he loved helping behind the scenes. Now, he had a national voice, but he was a kumbaya type person. Grounds crew love harmony and stuff like that, right? And then you have your air traffic control. We don't see them. They're up in a tower somewhere. They're up in a whole different building. They're up in a different part of the airport that we don't come into contact with them. But they're very precise. They're very accurate. They're analyzers. They're making sure that everything is systematic and everything is on point. Air traffic controllers are like, we're going to measure twice because we're only going to cut once. They can't make mistakes. So they're very perfectionist minded, right? And then you have your pilots. Pilots are very, think about what they do. They make decisions. They jump in that cockpit and they're taking you from A to Z. They get results. We might call them sometimes born leaders. And I want to talk about all four of those styles, because when I understand mine, I don't have to try to imitate somebody else. I can see the value in what I bring. Like I just explained that to you, right, Melanie? So all four of them bring something to the flight experience. So I just had a prospect, a client, about 2 weeks ago, and she's a grounds crew. And she was like, I didn't like when I got my report, and I didn't want to be a grounds crew. And I'm like, what? I said, let me tell you, Miss Kumbaya, let me tell you some famous grounds crew type personalities. Martin Luther King, Michael J. Fox, Michelle Obama. And when I said that, she went, oh, yes. You don't have to try to be somebody else. Be authentically who you are, because your gift, nobody else can do. You are a natural born, loyal, faithful. Some people wish they had that trait, but it doesn't come natural. Versus, again, the pilot can make a decision just like that. Pilots are very risk-taking, right? And so they're like, oh, decision. I'm not going to sit on the fence. For me, I'm not extremely high pilot. I'm middle ground, but because of my training, I can go high. But my natural is to be about middle ground, right, with it. And so I'm kind of be on the fence. I can be very decision-making, and then I can be very, what we call considerate when you make a decision. So I think about people before I make a decision. That's good sometimes, but sometimes that's not, because I've missed opportunities. But I don't regret not being that way. I love my outgoing, inspiring, motivating personality, because when I meet people, they're like, oh, Bridget. I even have people to say, we need a Bridget in the room, because when I bring the room, I'm like, hey, And so I just want people to understand, be authentically who you are. And then how you are is how you're going to communicate. Now, that could be a two-edged sword, because as I communicate, I have to be very self-aware. So for me, I am very extroverted. And so I can be too much sometimes for people. And so if I'm speaking, especially I've learned to do this in public speaking. If I'm in a crowd, if I have a crowd rather that I'm speaking to, and they're mostly introverts, Did I have to tone down some? I still could be inspirational, but I don't have to move my hands. I don't have to do all of the stuff that I do that comes natural to me. I learned how to tone down because communication is not about me getting my way. Communication is about me understanding other people too. Remember, I said communication is comprehension, not just using my mouth to speak, just talking. There's a whole vibe. And even with our body language, 90% of what we communicate is nonverbal. So I stopped for a minute. Go ahead.
You don't have to stop. No, it's very interesting. I'm learning a lot. This is good. This is good. I guess for me, I wanted to go back to towards the beginning, and you mentioned it again in the latter parts of when you were speaking about you being so self-aware. And I think that is a big thing in our community where we're just moving through life and reacting to things, and we're not taking a moment to sit down with why am I feeling this way? Where did that come from? And that, kind of sparks the self-awareness piece. So talk to me a little bit about how you got so self-aware. What were some of the things that you did or some of the steps that you took to make sure you knew who Brigitte was?
Well, again, I've always been curious. Psychology has just been a thing for me. Sociology has been a thing for me. I just love people. I love people watching. I love behavior, right? And so what I call myself now is a behavior wealth strategist. And so my goal is to teach people that there is wealth in your behavior. Your behavior can help you. Your behavior can hinder you. And sometimes that hindering literally can create you momentum to have a downfall in an area, or it also can prop you up. And so understanding that, again, you have to literally be self-aware. And so I've always been intrigued by learning, but it didn't always start that way. In my early 20s, I didn't know myself. I had some abuse as a child, had things that like even tampered my voice. I say I had a microphone in my mouth, as a kid, but at times I didn't, because I thought I needed to go within because of the fact of some things that was happening to me. But in my 20s, I had to get past all of that. And so my self-awareness, actually, my journey for self-awareness actually started one particular day. And I absolutely can tell you that day. I can tell you the day, I can tell you the time, I can tell you like where I was at. It was that much of an epiphany. And it came when I tried to unlife myself. And I was going through really, really, a lot of challenging things going through my head, just all kind of stuff in a series of depression. And I'm glad we're having this conversation with it being mental health awareness, month. I wasn't aware of the things. And so when I did that, I had enough sense. I called my mom and I said, Mom, at the time, Melanie, this was so crazy about it. I had children. I had 2 children. And they both were under 3. And I called my mom and I said, I love you. Just always make sure you be there for my kids. And she said, what? And I hung up the phone. And back then we had, real home phones. So I unplugged the phone and she couldn't call me. And she came over there. They kicked the door in. My stepfather had a size 14, 13 shoe. It was big, whatever it was. He was almost 6. He was like 6'6", 6'7", something like that. He bust the door in. They rushed me to the hospital. And that began my journey. But the biggest epiphany wasn't even that piece. The biggest epiphany was my uncle was a Black Panther. So he was a civil rights leader, started one of the Black Panther chapters. We're from Peoria, Illinois. He was assassinated. And I knew all of that, but I didn't know backstory. And when I tried to take my life, my mom sat me down and I had a class, a university class. I was going to college and I had this class and we were talking about it in the class. And everybody else knew more about the Black Panthers than I did. I went home. I went to my mother's house and I said, how do they know more than I do? And so she started sharing stuff with me. By this time, I'm feeling bad because I've gotten back in school, but I'm still dealing with the guilt of trying to unlife myself. And she shared with me, she said his last words, he knew he was going to be killed. He knew he was going to be killed. My mother had a dream. She knew he was going to be killed. So she tried to beg him to, change course and like, don't go to Chicago and work on the state level. Stay here, in our little hometown of Peoria, Illinois. And he said, no. He said, I know my life is at risk. And he pointed to me and my 1-year-old cousin. I was 3 at the time. My cousin was 1. Pointed to us and said, I have to do this for them. He didn't have any children. When my mother told me that story, Melanie, that day right there was the second epiphany. So it was almost like the foundation was me trying to unlife myself, and how that whole thing, I was so embarrassed. I said, I wouldn't even do it out of embarrassment. It was just a traumatic experience. But then when my mother put it on top, the story of my uncle, and that his last words was, I have to go do this because I want her to have a different life. I said, wait a minute, I've been squandering my time. I've been squandering my talent. I've been squandering this value that God has placed in me. Girl, I got myself together. I went from a 1.6 GPA to I graduated the only African-American in my educational department with honors, walked across that stage with honors, was featured in the newspaper because at the time, not my current husband, but my ex-husband and I, we graduated together. We walked across stage together. And so that began my journey of, I can really do this thing and I have to really. And so after that, I was on a mission for self-awareness for other people to see how valuable they are, what God has placed in them, and then using whatever tools I needed to make that happen. And now I absolutely love and use the flight assessment to make that happen. And so when people understand who they are, the enemy had to try to come after me because my mouth, I'm an inspirer. I'm a flight attendant. Remember, I said the people experience. When I go around people, my goal is to motivate them. Grounds crew, they come around, they're going to be those people, like I say, the Martin Luther Kings. They're going to motivate people, but in a different way, in help and support. That air traffic control is going to bring that wisdom, that knowledge, and those systems to the place. And that pilot is going to get things done. They're action takers. And so if we understand who we are, we can really, really be great. And so that was 30. Oh, Lord, I had to date my children. That was about 35 years ago when I tried to unlife myself. From that time to now, I've had many iterations, like the iPhone, like it's on, what is 15 out now? Like I got a whole bunch, I got 35 iterations of Brigitte. And I'm always constantly still on a journey to learn more about myself. And I want people to be able to do that. When we learn ourselves, as I said, when we're our own coach, it's great for us to get other people, but nobody knows us like us. And when we're truthful and honest, going back to what I said about being authentic, when you can truly be authentic in the skin that you're in and accept your strengths and accept your limitations, but then work on trying to close the gap of those limitations. And see, a lot of people try to do it by fixing the limitation. Like, I'm going to work on my weakness. No, work on your strength. And it's going to diminish the weakness.
Love it. Wow. That was so powerful. I just want to sit here and listen. I don't even want to talk.
Thank you.
That's such a powerful story. I think it really just underscores the importance of knowing who you are. Knowing who you are is such a huge, huge like cheat code for life.
Yeah. That self-awareness is so deep, Melanie. The fact that even when I went into education, I would when I was a teacher, even I would walk up to parents and I would be spot on talking to parents about their children. And they were like, how do you know this? I said, I see it because I saw what it was with me. And so the more aware that I got about myself, it even helped me again with awareness of other people. This was way before, again, I'm, technically coaching now. Like that foundation started, again, 30 something years ago. And when I even became a principal, being able to know myself so well helped me then again be able to understand my students that I serve and being able to spot that and talk to them. And one of the stories that I had, one young man, he was in the 8th grade and he wanted to unlife himself. And, I was waiting for his mom to come. So I kept him, we had to keep him safe. We had to call, medical and everything. And so while they were there, I was talking to mom on the phone. I was like, is it okay for me to talk to him? And one of the things that I shared with him, I was like, I feel you. I've been there. I tried it. And he looked at me and I was like, absolutely. So you all look at me and think everybody has it together. All adults don't even have it together. I said, but here's what I want you to see. I've had, and at that time, I think I had about 2,000 children that I had been blessed to be over, whether teacher or principal at that point. And I said, do you know, I wouldn't have been here to have been able to be a spark in no one's life, and not even you. I said, and so I was telling him, because he loved me. Like, he had issues, but this particular student, him and I had an amazing relationship. And I was kind of like his bodyguard, because people would, kind of put him in a box. And I was like, we're not doing that to him. He's a human being. He has feelings just like everybody else. And we're going to make sure that we treat him respectfully, because he would do stuff and he'd get in trouble. It was like, okay, we're going to deal with him right. That's a whole nother story. But my point that I was making with him is, like, he knew that I loved him. I use that word, love. But again, that's self-awareness. I understand that my language, we all have a primal language. My primal language is, I am loved. And so I give that easily to people. And so for him, I was able to do that and just share with him. I said, how would you feel if Miss Jackson wasn't here? He was like, I said, exactly. That's how we feel about you, baby. I won't say his name on here, but I was like, that's how I feel about you. Like, we need you. And he had an amazing rest of the school year, Just sometimes people need to be, again, self-aware, just self-aware in different forms and fashions. I know we're talking about business and we're talking about in the career, but even going back down to children, if more children were self-aware, if parents were able to support them in that, what kind of world would we have?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of world would we have?
Yeah, that's a big one for sure for me, because my son, I was not ready for him. He's just so totally different, and I'm learning what he needs as I go. It's trial and error, and I really try to feed into his needs. He's a creative, like a true creative. Like, I took his devices. 2 days later, he was like, Mommy, I don't have any inspiration. I can't create anything, because he was using his devices to, look at stuff and get inspired to make something. He makes games, and he got me now, like, creating a game in Canva, his logos and all of this. He's 11.
Wow.
And so, like, knowing who he is, he's not strong at math, but he can analyze information.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of knowing, all right, and understanding and honoring that, I'm not going to go hard on him because he got, the math problem wrong. And I'm emphasizing his strengths, like you said. He's artsy, he's creative, he makes games. His brain is on 100. And I'm like, I don't even understand what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
So I love that you brought that up. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we have to encourage them, again, to be authentic and love who they are. And let me, since you were talking about that, let me go here right quick. So when I was a teacher, my first classroom, I had a first and second grade classroom, and it was in the urban area. We're outside of Flint, Michigan, in a community called Beecher. So Beecher Bucks, if you're listening, hey. So we had kids in that classroom, and I had one particular parent that their child was rambunctious, got in trouble a lot. And when I first started, I really had the patience of Job. I still did. I didn't yell at kids. I didn't do all of that stuff. But as I got older, some of them like, stop. But I really had a lot of patience. And one of the things that I was telling this particular mom is, this child is headstrong. Don't take that away from them.
Right.
You see, even back then, I didn't know anything that year. That was my first year teaching. I knew nothing about the DISC assessment. But now, as I think about what I was telling her, I was talking about that D-type personality, or that pilot. I'm like, leave him alone. Like, cultivate it and move around it. He has to understand and know how to code switch, but don't take it from him. Allow him to have that awareness that I'm a leader. But right now, how I'm leading in my limitation and not in my strength. Because he'd start something up in the classroom and everybody else was following him. And I was like, do not discourage him from being so headstrong, just know how to maneuver it. And as adults, if we did the same thing, I quit a job one time, Melanie, because I had a boss that was truly headstrong. And I told her, I was like, you all don't even appreciate me. I quit. I literally quit. But before I quit, I had brought, and this was made me upset, and this is why I quit. I had brought the organization in $500,000 in 6 weeks. I'm gonna pause right there. I said what I said. Yes. I brought in myself. This school was a small school. I didn't have a big staff. Staff was turning over. When I got there, I think I was principal number 7. The school hadn't even been open 3 years. I was principal number 7. And so I'm a flight attendant. Again, I have that interactive personality. I'm extroverted. I rented an ice cream truck. I went out door to door. I drove my car some days. Some days I got an ice cream truck a couple of times, went out and knocked on the doors. The parents were so impressed, Melanie, that I was the principal. They were like, what? They were like, oh, we come to sign up. So I'm telling my boss this, and she's more air trafficky and pilot. So she wanted to see the numbers. She had to see the data. She didn't understand the people orientation side of me. I'm like, listen, I am like the Pied Piper. They're coming. I promise you they're coming. So we had a little riff because she didn't believe me. And I didn't like how she was talking to me either. Because sometimes pilot type personalities, if they don't know how to hone that, they talk, I won't say it like this, like they bark, but they're very aggressive. They're very, very assertive. And that's how she was. Well, me, the type of personality that I have, I get in my emotions. And so I'm like, it wasn't a good mix because again, as I started off the conversation with you, Melanie, we were communicating, but we definitely weren't comprehending. We weren't seeking to understand each other. Right. And so I literally canvassed the neighborhood for 6 weeks. I didn't even have a secretary. My secretary was on a leave of absence. So I was out there solo uno. And I told her, I said, they're coming in. They're coming in. I had a mark that I wanted to get a minimum of about 55 students. 67 came. Our dissension was, I told her we needed to hire at least 4 new staff members. And she was like, nope, I got to see the numbers. So she didn't hire the staff members. In between there, I told my husband, I have to be valued at the point that I was almost 50. I wasn't 50 yet, but I was knocking at the door. And I was like, listen, I'm at the end of my career. I'm not at the beginning. I don't just take people talking to me any kind of way. I told my husband, I said, if she come talk crazy one more time, I'm leaving. And I did. I quit 3 days before the new school year started. Wow. And I walked away. And I tell that story a lot of times to people because I think, I could have worked that better. I told you, I understand that self-awareness. I had to understand I'm very emotional as a flight attendant. We can be very emotional. And so we have to learn how to get out of our emotions. And so that's where I'm at in my life right now. I understand that. I identify when that limitation tries to sneak up and I'm like, here you go. And then I have strategies for that. But I'm not that same Brigitte that does that. So the Brigitte now, I probably would have tried to have a mediation conversation. Listen, I need you just to value me. And the same thing with her. And then we could have worked it out because I feel like we really could have moved at school. So I don't know if she's still at the school, but I know they've had 3 more principals since I left there. Oh, and that was what, almost 9 years ago. So, we have to have this awareness. This awareness can be detrimental.
Absolutely.
Going back to behavioral wealth, having behavioral wealth,
Yeah. Well, how did you get into this work? And then what exactly do you do with your clients? Like, who do you serve? Who do you help? Who do you support? Like, who would hire you and for what purpose? And then, like, how did you decide, this is what I'm going to do?
Well, right now, again, I work with leaders and their leadership teams to help them develop, to grow. Because again, as a leader, when I was a leader, I struggled. When I first started, I let it tell on myself. My first school I was there for 5 years. By the time I left, about 90% of the staff had turned over. Now, at the beginning, it wasn't too bad because we needed, to make sure we shook the tree and people that really wanted to serve. My school was in Detroit. It was an urban school. And so we needed to have people that really cared about the children that we served. But I now, almost 20 years later, I can admit and say, well, Brigitte, you were part of that problem too. It wasn't just, the staff. There were some things that I had to work on. And because of that, those are the people that I try to go after. I want to work with people who truly, again, understand and know I need to develop my leadership because my leadership can make or break things, right? And so right now, currently, most of my clients are business owners. And so work with them to help them develop those teams so they can, again, increase profits. I go back to, again, behavior wealth. A lot of people look at the financial sides of things, but they don't see how the behavior can be wealthy in the physical, but in the, also in the actual natural tangible. It can cost you. Like I said, I made $500,000 for this one particular school. If they had kept me, like if I did that one time and I hadn't even been at the school 6 months. So if I had done that, or maybe 7, 8 months I had been into school. If I could do that fast, I sure want to let me go. And so that's what I do right now. I work with people for them to understand and see. A lot of times, and I know you know this with working with people with doing, formerly what you were doing with resumes and working with people in the career field and everything, understanding, are you in the right place? Are you positioned rightly for your personality, for your behavior preference? As I said, I'm very outgoing. I'm people-centered. So if you put me behind a desk, nowhere in the world I'm going to survive. I will be a fish out of water. I have to talk to people. So I have a home-based business, and I don't have an outside office right now. I literally, my office is in my home. So I know I have to go out and touch people. So I go out and touch people. I do a lot of outside networking. I do different things. I'm in networking groups. I'm in affiliations. I make sure that the people are surrounded me because that is my natural superpower. And if I don't get that fed, Bridget gonna die. And so that's the same thing that I try to share with my clients. And those are the type of clients that I'm looking for, people that know they're struggling. One particular client that I had never managed other people, had a very successful high 6-figure business that she started just easily, boom, but had never managed people. And so understanding and knowing, you got to know how to do that and stuff too, so it's two-sided to it. So if that's not your thing, you have the business acumen, but what are you going to do about your professional development? Even I talk to a lot of people, they don't even put the professional development as a line item in their budget because they don't see sometimes, not see the value, but they don't see the urgency of it. But like I just said, had my former boss been trained and the higher ups had have made sure that she did some things, Bridget probably would have still been there. Because like I said, they've had multiple principals since I left. I didn't leave because I wanted to leave education. God shook me and said, let's go. It's time for you to do your own thing. Because I cried. You asked my husband for 6 months. I went to pillow. I was like, no, God, I don't want to do this. I want to go back. And he has not allowed me to go back. I say he has a good sense of humor. So those are the kind of people that I'm looking for. I love teaching people again about understanding their power. In fact, I have a podcast called Powerful. I have a book called Powerful, Growing You and Unlock Your Purposes. So I'm always trying to teach people about the power that is within, because one day I didn't know what my power within was. Had I known that, I would have never tried to, again, as I say, unlife myself. And actually, Bridget means strength. So I love to tell people that, so it's just apropos that I brought it full circle. Yeah.
Yes, love it. Okay, that's amazing. Amazing. Well, I want to say thank you so much for being here and just telling your story and just sharing so many gems with us around communicating and leadership, because I think this is the stuff that people tend to gloss over, or they don't focus on it. They just get straight to, like you said, those tangibles, the numbers, but this is important to get to the numbers.
Yes.
And I feel like there's such a big disconnect with learning how to communicate and learning the soft skills and really being able to make things happen through your words and how you communicate and all of those things. So thank you so much for the work that you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes,
And
yes,
just
ma'am.
meeting, because even that with us meeting, as I said, I
Mhm.
know I'm very people oriented. So I tell people like this. I tell people flight attendant type people. And so again, if people are listening and they're flight attendant type people, listen, you have to be around people. People give you energy. Grounds crew type people, they're okay. My husband's a high grounds crew. He's okay with being in the cut. But when he's around people that he knows, he loves to be around those people. Air traffic controllers, they're like, people, they're like Spock, like you're stranger danger. Because they're comfortable again in being on that task side. Think about what an air traffic controller does. And the same thing with the pilot. They're definitely extroverted. So they're gonna be around people, but they're like, let's get in action, and they're short with theirs. So a pilot is not going to stand there and talk to you forever. Like me,
Yeah.
I'm going to talk and talk and talk and talk and
No,
talk. The
see,
pilot's
I'm
like,
a
I got to
D.
say what I got to
I'm
say.
the I'm the pilot.
Get it done.
Definitely the
Get it
pilot.
done.
What we doing?
Let's
Let's
make
go.
it happen, Captain. Let's go.
Y'all moving too slow. Like, can we wrap this up? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but
Definitely.
you're people oriented. You're extroverted, but it's like, okay, that took too long. We could did that in 10 minutes, versus the pilot, versus the flight attendant, that might take about 15 minutes. And so again, just to wrap up again, Melanie, I just wanted to say that because I want people to understand other people. If you're having issues with people, I need people to think, how aware are you of your strength? And then how aware of you are other people's strength? I like to call them genius. Like, do you know the genius of people that are around you? Because if you value other people's genius, that's when the stuff gets good.
Yes, that's amazing. Well, listen, if you want to connect with Brigitte, visit her website. She has a podcast. Again, the name of that is Powerful, right?
Yes.
She's on Instagram at Brigitte Transform. She's on LinkedIn, Brigitte Brown Jackson. Connect with her. Okay. Connect with her if you want some support with how you communicate. If you are a leader looking to, communicate better or really improve your leadership abilities and be able to kind of just connect with people and have them to rally around you and get their buy-in and for them to trust you. That's really what it's all about. And so Bridget's your girl. Okay. Clearly she knows what she's talking about. Okay. She's legit out here. And so definitely you want to get into her space for sure. And thank you again, Bridget, for joining me
Thank
today. I
you.
appreciate your time and
Thank
your
you for having me.
expertise. Absolutely.
I think I had
Absolutely.
started saying that you and I met because of networking.
Yeah.
I'm in a speakers networking group, and I found your podcast and reached out to you. So that networking is so very important. So just
Oh,
everybody needs to know themselves, know
yeah.
yourself and what you need. And I
Absolutely.
needed a Melanie in my life.
And Bridget was a blessing to me too because she invited me to one of her networking events. And from that one event, I got a client. So thank you for that. Appreciate
Yeah.
you for
And
putting
thank
me
you
in the
for thinking
room.
about me. My Amazon gift coming in the mail today. I finally used it.
Okay, I love it. I love it. I love it. Enjoy that. So if you
Thank
enjoyed this episode, you want to support the podcast, subscribe, leave a rating, leave a review, and remember, have an empowered presence. Empowered is just the authority of power to do something, and presence is the state of existing. So just be power because you already are. All right. Thanks everyone for listening. And until next time, happy self marketing.